Okay, so welcome, dear ladies and friends. We're so happy to have you here for our May Urban Davy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrea, and I have always the honor to co-host this beautiful gathering with our dear Rukmini Walker. Rukmini Walker is here. You may not see her video, just as an FYI, she's across the pond in the beautiful Bhaktivedanta Manor in the UK with some internet issues. So that's why she's keeping her video off to make sure that she's able to participate. So today we have, some of you may know her, and I'm so excited to introduce her, Dhanya Devi Dasi. And she is going to be speaking on self-care and the sacred feminine. Does it get any more urban Davy than that? I don't think so, right, ladies? So this is going to be an interactive session where we'll explore Bhakti principles regarding caring for our mind, our body, and our spirit. And together, we're going to deepen our understanding of our sacred feminine nature as a way of creating a spiritual paradigm for self-care. And just a little bit about dear Dhanya. Dhanya holds a master's degree in counselor education and holds a specialist degree in couples and family therapy. She aims to help individuals and relationships thrive with deep spiritual principles at the core of therapeutic experience. In addition to traditional modalities, Dhanya is passionate about developing therapeutic tools that incorporate Bhakti principles and practices as a means of reconnecting with our essential nature. So thank you again, Dhanya, for joining us. The virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Andrea. Thank you to Rukmini. This is such an honor to be here in community with you all. So I'll offer some prayers to our spiritual teachers and to our spiritual lineage that hands down the wisdom that we'll be hopefully trying to share today. And I offer my respects to all of you and to all the other practitioners who are pursuing the path of self-realization. Okay, so today I thought, when I got asked to speak, I felt so honored, and I also felt like, I know that this community does so much work and so much introspection and meditation on ways to incorporate practical spirituality, to take principles that can sometimes seem like very large and very profound, and to really ground them in our day-to-day life. And that's what's so marvelous about you all and the relationships that you all have with one another. I was thinking like, wow, okay, what can we really talk about that feels relevant? And then I was thinking, well, Mother's Day is in the month of May. So how do we kind of like fold that in? Many of you may be mothers or maybe mothering, right? You can mother a garden, you can mother a creative project, you can mother your business. So in so many aspects, we tap into that archetype of mothering. And of course, we've all had a mother. And that is a relationship that is also many layered, surely, even for those of us that had amazing moms, there's many layers. And for those of us that might have had, difficulty in our relationships with our moms, there are certainly also many layers. And I think that all kind of has its root in our pursuit of divine motherhood, right? And divine motherhood, there's something that we innately know, right? Even let's say if we have a problematic relationship with our mom, or even just a problematic phase, right, in our mothering relationship, we can somehow sense that it's in need of help or in need of support by way of contrast. Even if we've never had a perfect relationship with our mother or a perfect relationship as a mother, how do we know that there is such a thing as a healthy, loving, mothering relationship? And what our teachers hand down to us through scripture and through their own, personal revelation is that all relationships that we have in the material world are sort of like simulation of something perfect that exists in the spiritual dimension. So the fact that I have a mom and that I am a mom in my particular case, or that I have this archetype of mothering, it means that in the spiritual dimension, there is a perfect motherhood. And the embodiment, the personification of that perfect motherhood is Sri Radha, Srimati Radharani, as we sometimes refer to her. And this is the feminine counterpart of the divine masculine, which is Krishna, the all attractive. And so this cohesion that there is between divine masculine and divine feminine is kind of perfected in that union of Radha and Krishna. And we often hear about Krishna's opulences and Krishna's pastimes, and that's so important because all energy is essentially his, right? Everything is an emanation from him. And even though there's millions of universes and millions of living beings, and essentially he's considered to be the prime masculine, right? That prime masculine energy, and all emanations from that, all other living beings, are considered to be attracted to him, which it gives a feminine connotation. So we're not talking about anything organic in the sense of like physiology. This is in a spiritual dimension. The attractive has that masculine energy, and the attracted has the feminine energy. So it's considered that of all living entities, we all have that spark of being attracted to Krishna. Of all living entities, the queen, the empress, the ultimate goddess of being attracted to Krishna is Srimati Radharani. And so I was thinking like, wow, I want to somehow, I want to somehow bring in that element of really honoring the divine feminine. So how do you go from Sri Radha, who is the ultimate embodiment, personification of divine femininity, how do you go from that to like what I do in my day-to-day life? Which is like, it feels like it could be like two different universes, to say the least, right? But here's what's beautiful about Bhakti, is that Bhakti doesn't just give you this far off personality that's just kind of like hovering up here, and then me in my little world, and then this weird kind of dichotomy of like the spirit and the material, and then they're just always kind of separate, right? Actually, in our Bhakti literature, it's considered that the jiva, right, each individual living entity, is considered marginal. Marginal meaning that it's on a margin. It's like right on the teetering edge, right? There's a dear teacher of ours, Vaisheshika Das, who he says that the living entity's natural tendency is to be open to suggestion. So that means that there's a certain aperture, there's a certain curiosity. That's actually one of the kind of natural prime ingredients of being a spirit soul, is that there's a curiosity, and that curiosity can tip into the material. Like, what's over there? What if I try and be the boss? What if I'm the center? What if I just try and, use this vessel to kind of satisfy my needs? But it also means that I have potentially a natural curiosity for the spiritual. Who am I? What am I meant to do? What are these relationships for? What is my higher power? How do I relate to my higher power? Is there a purpose to this human form of life? So that openness to suggestion, that's actually what we're going to be working with first and foremost, because really, really, in the material world, the only true power that we have is the power of our attention, or the power of our will. And it's super teeny, teeny, tiny. It's not even that like massive. And what we're kind of working with is like the material modes of nature that are constantly shifting and changing and blending and mixing and coming apart. And so it's quite a powerful environment that we're immersed in, and that's on purpose. It's supposed to be a totally immersive environment, right? It's just like when you watch a movie, they dim the lights, they give you this massive screen, they have you sit kind of like in a place that's a certain distance so that you have a certain perspective. And the reason why is because if any of those dimensions were a little bit different, you might not be able to suspend your disbelief. You might not be able to suspend that thought of like, well, this is a movie and I paid to be here and they're all actors and this is So in order to suspend that disbelief, we have a super immersive material experience. And what's cool is that tapping into our essential nature, tapping into our spiritual nature, it's not like a project of something I have to get to. It's not like an evolution of something where I have to force myself into this way of being that I'm not yet at. On a material level, that might be like kind of true. But really, that eternal knowledge, bliss that I am, it's happening. It's already in there. That little soul, that spark of spirit, it exists in a permanent state of knowledge and bliss. And what I'm actually doing is just kind of taking off all this rust and conditioning and misconception, illusion, confusion, just to get back to what's at the core, right? And so it's less of something that I'm trying to get to and more something of returning to authenticity. It's allowing layers of inauthenticity to sort of like melt off, right? So when we think of that melting off, it feels a little counterintuitive to being like very rigid and being very ambitious and being very hard on myself and speaking roughly to myself, right? When you think about melting, like when you melt into a hug or when you melt into a couch, some words that might come up are like warmth, relaxation, comfort, belonging, right? When I get home and I melt into my couch, I'm like, because it's my couch. It's my home. I'm feeling relaxed. I belong here, right? Just like you don't necessarily melt at the couch of like a person whose house you're visiting for the first time. Most of us don't just like arrive and go like, because it's not my house. I'm new here. I'm not so comfortable yet. I'm still, right? And so this speaks to safety. I'm not going to melt into anything I don't feel safe in. I'm not going to melt into my spiritual identity. I'm not going to allow the melting off of all of my material identities and misconceptions. It's not going to happen if I don't feel safe. So when we talk about spiritual community, spiritual relationships, and even my own individual spiritual practice, I have to be able to tap into a basic sense of safety. Safety, not like, I don't think my house is going to get burgled today, which I'm sure it won't, hopefully it won't. It's more so, it's like physiological safety. It's a sense of, I need to be able to soothe my nervous system to the point where I'm open. I'm tapping into that openness to suggestion, that curiosity. It's not going to happen if I don't feel safe, right? So on a basic level, just to kind of bring it back to the mothering, I have two small kids. I have a toddler and an infant. At home, they are totally free to roam. They go everywhere. Their curiosity is just like completely okay because this place is safe and they've been here so often and there's so many clues that for them indicate safety, right? We have like little things so they don't bump their head on the edges of tables. I demonstrate for them how to kind of crawl around on the carpet and what areas they can go to and what areas they can't. There are dangerous elements like outlets that are covered, and we don't have this like scot-free. So I'm not going to say my house is like fully baby proof, but we've done a pretty good job by baby number 2 of like sort of baby proofing our house. So why am I bringing this up as an example? Because when my kids go to a foreign environment, they don't necessarily feel that curiosity yet. It means that they can warm up to it, but they don't just kind of naturally click in and go, aha, this is my space. I need to provide for them, me as mother, I need to provide for them a sense of safety, that it's okay to be curious. It's okay to explore. It's okay to try things on, and that I can show them how to do it, right? And so in a sense, if we want to kind of move this metaphor onto what the theme of our talk is today, the Divine Mother is that channel of safety that we can seek out. And she will generate the safety with which we can explore our spiritual life with authenticity, with curiosity, right? She makes the environments safe. She's someone that we can pray to. She's someone that we can establish a relationship with. She's someone that we can learn from in order to understand how to navigate foreign environments safely. And what's more foreign to a spirit soul than the material world, right? There's that whole, I don't remember who said it, that we're not material beings we're spirits having a material experience or whatever it is. So what this means to say is that we can onboard grace as a way of generating emotional, psychological safety in our spiritual life, right? And that doesn't in any way negate maybe some of the discipline that we might be trying to accomplish, chanting 16 rounds of japa or mantra meditation. It might be visiting a temple and engaging in some sort of worship. It may be doing some sort of service on a regular basis. It could be the way that we do our job. So it doesn't necessarily mean, and this can sometimes happen in like maybe more new agey circles, where in an effort to tap into feminine qualities, I start detaching from healthy masculine qualities. I start detaching from accountability, from discipline, from assertiveness, speaking my truth. I start shying away from authority. I start shying away from lineage teacher, because what I'm doing is I'm being kind of repelled by the ways in which that healthy masculine has been unhealthy, and it's failed me, right? And so this could be maybe feeling turned off by institutions, or being reticent to kind of accept the teacher, or having some hesitation around scripture. So anything that has that kind of archetypally masculine energy around it. The idea is not to create another dichotomy, because that black and white thinking, that's like a very material symptom. My desire to categorize, my desire to create polarity, that's a very kind of basic, sometimes necessary way of understanding matter and spirit. But what I find is helpful, and what our spiritual teachers have indicated happens at higher levels of spiritual development, is my need to categorize and sort of separate out becomes secondary. And I now seek to kind of harmonize, to seek common ground, to marry things that might seem at first glance either contradictory or very different, or, so on. So what we're trying to harmonize is healthy masculine, which we have a pretty good idea of what that might be in terms of, again, what I want my sadhana, my personal spiritual practice to look like, or some of the kind of obvious rules and regulations that are out there, ahimsa, for example, being nonviolent, choosing not to, consume animal products as a way of demonstrating, care for animals, or telling the truth because honesty is a virtue, all of those things. That has the kind of that like masculine energy. And the feminine energy is to say, I want to pray to the Divine Mother to create so much safety, to kind of bathe me in the grace that'll help me feel safe enough to do things a different way, right? So kind of based on that, I wanted to share with you all, here's what I'll share. In the Bhagavad Gita, and it's what I'll tell you something that's interesting about this. I'm going to put the link in the chat so that you guys can check out this verse. This is in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is talking about how he expresses his divinity in different elements that we might be able to pick up on as temporary residents of the material world, right? And so he talks about who he is in nature, and amongst fish I'm the shark, and amongst purifiers I'm the wind. And so when I feel the wind, I'm like, that's Krishna. When I hopefully I don't see a shark, but if I see a shark, I'm like, that's Krishna too. So I'll tell you here in this verse. Okay, so it says, I am all devouring death, and I am the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Among women I am fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience. So right off the bat, I've read this verse so many times. And for those of us that kind of like touch base with the Gita, this is like not an uncommon verse at all. It's like very frequently quoted. It is gnarly to think that these two are paired together, because Krishna is saying, I am all devouring death, and I am the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Completely epic, massive, scary, even like just the most epic thing that he could say, right? I'm the end of everything, and I'm the beginning of everything that you don't even know could be out there and possible, right? And then the next verse is, or the next part of the verse is, among women I am fame, fortune, fine. This is so grounded in like what we see. This is like real life. This is so grounded, right? And so I feel like this is the perfect, again, the marriage of something that's totally out here, open, cosmic, enormous, and something that's like very zoomed in, and something that's very evident. And what's cool is many teachers will make the distinction specifically here, right? If we read into what the purport, into what Srila Prabhupada, the author and the translator of these purports, what he says. He says the 7 opulences listed, fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience, are considered feminine. If a person possesses all of them or some of them, he becomes glorious, right? And so the reason why this is interesting is because it's saying, obviously, that these qualities are not limited to a male body or a female body or any kind of gender identification. These opulences themselves are considered to be feminine. And so it's possible that if we identify with femininity just in our present psychological state, we're not talking about the body, we're talking about the psychological state of femininity. If we already have an edge where we identify with femininity, it could play to our advantage. We might be able to more easily tap in to these particular opulences that are described as energetically feminine. So this is about using the resources that are available to us to kind of tap into a wellspring in our spiritual life, right? Let's take a look at what he says after, just a couple lines down. He says, the ability not only to read many books on different subject matters, but to understand them and apply them when necessary is intelligence, medha, another opulence, right? So this is so cool because this is not book smart, right? There's a, I don't know if this is like, I don't know where this came from, but they say that like intelligence is knowing that tomato is a fruit, and then wisdom is knowing to not put tomato in a fruit salad. So it's kind of like, it's like, okay, I get, you can be book smart. You'd be like, this is technically a fruit. And it's like, yeah, but would you put it in a fruit salad? So this is kind of what I think a very simplified example of what I think Prabhupada might be getting at, which is you can be book smart, right? And often in our literature, we'll read like professional reciters of the Vedas or professional kirtaniyas, people who kind of know how to go through the motions and present the information or present the practice. And that's what it is. It's a presentation, it's a performance. But is there an internal knowing, right? Is there a translation of what I know into wisdom, right? What is the practical application? What is the highest expression of this knowledge, right? That is married to authenticity, that actually honors who I am as a spirit soul, that honors others in their, in their true spirit, and that is for the benefit of all, right? And so this is what intelligence is. And this is a very cool way of making that distinction. The other line that comes after that is the ability to overcome unsteadiness is called firmness or steadfastness, dritti, right? Steadfastness. This is also cool because it might be something that we stereotypically associate with masculinity, which is my determination, my assertiveness. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to check my goals, right? And so it has that kind of achievement orientation flavor to it. And achievement orientation is a naturally masculine, or let's say patriarchal thing, right? It's very much part of like our capitalist culture, is very much part of our consumer culture, like check, 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 check. And there's a certain like very basic, but also superficial satisfaction that comes from like having a to-do list and check, 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 check. I think that what Prabhupada is getting at in this purport is something so much more profound, so much deeper, right? The ability to overcome unsteadiness is called firmness or steadfastness. It's constance. Constance, right? That's even like traditionally, that's a name in the English language. You would name a woman Constance. So constance, that ability to stay steady, it's that heartbeat, it's keeping at something, not from this maybe achievement orientation lens of like, I want to do, but this means something to me. I'm doing this for a reason. Let me tap into the why. Let me tap into the root, into the heart of something. And that propels me through challenges in a way that keeps me steady, right? And we'll bring it back to the motherhood example. Not motherhood as in I had biological children. Motherhood as in I am the mother of a project, of a mission, of a business, of a service, and also of like humans, right? They all require, in order for you really to take it like and hit a home run and take it all the way home, it requires tapping into the why on such a deep level that you're able to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles, right? I have had to overcome, even in my very privileged bubble of motherhood, which I'm very thankful and very grateful to be very supported in my motherhood. There are moments in my motherhood where I'm just like, this is not, I can't, there's no way. This is asking of me something that I am not able to provide. I don't have the skills for this yet. I don't know how to do this. Like how, right? An example of that's having 2 sick kids at the same time. No skills to be able to handle that until that circumstance descended upon me. There was no training. There was no preparation. And also it comes without warning. It's not like someone's like, hey, in 3 days, both your kids are going to be terribly sick. So get as much sleep as you can, load up on vitamin C, make sure that you have the babysitter. No, it literally is a circumstance that descends on you, and you build the skills as you are required to have them. There's just like not another way that it gets built, right? And so using what I know, what little I know, or what resources I have, right? Reaching back into that medha, right? The internalized knowledge that I'm able to kind of ask to come forth in the right circumstance, that I'm able to embody, or that I'm being asked to embody before I really know how, will perhaps give me those roots and give me the steadfastness that is required for me to stick with the situation, even though it's like really asking me to kind of put forth skills that I don't have yet, right? Just like when you build muscle at a gym, it's not like I have those muscles yet, and that's why I can lift the weight. I'm literally asking my body to do something it doesn't know how to do yet. And in doing it, I'm building the muscle. I'm building the capacity to do something by pushing myself to that limit of what I've done before and what I have not done yet. And that's how these skills become refined, right? I'm sharpening this. I can't do that if I don't tap into a deep inner reason, a deep inner meaning, an identity actually, that allows me this steadfastness, right? So the next quality, we'll just kind of take it into the next line. And when one is fully qualified, yet is humble and gentle, and when one is able to keep his balance, both in sorrow and in the ecstasy of joy, he has the opulence called patience, shama. So this is interesting because patience is usually simplified, but let's say in our English language, right? This might be different in different languages. But in our English language, we'll say something like, well, I just have to be patient. And that means like, I just got to sit here and wait and kind of bide my time until things unfold, and hopefully in the way that I've been praying and asking for. So patience means like I'll wait, and there's a kind of this, right? What I did with my hand, there's like a clenching, or like a kind of like a, all right, I'm waiting. And that's not what patience is according to this much more developed definition that Srila Prabhupada is giving. He's giving this definition that has so much harmony of seeming opposites. Someone is qualified, yet is humble and gentle, which means it's not like I deserve, right? It's the opposite of entitlement, right? When you're fully qualified, but you're willing to be humble and gentle, which means I'm allowing things to unfold, that speaks to trust. It speaks to trust. It means that I'm not rushing the process. I'm not wanting to kind of take over control, right? I'm accepting, and this is part of the peace formula elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, right? It's that Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer. It means that we're meant to please him, and by watering that root, then all the leaves get nourished and I get pleased as well. It means that he's the ultimate controller, which means that's, thank God, that's not my job, because I'm not great at it anyways, and I don't know everything that's happening, and I don't understand the very complex laws of karma, and I don't, there's so many things that are outside of my, what to speak of conscious awareness, I just completely out of my awareness in any level. So I'm not the controller, I'm not the enjoyer, and he's also the dearmost friend. What a marriage of 3 things, because someone can be the ultimate enjoyer, right? We all understand like, okay, my higher power has a capacity for enjoyment beyond my own, and actually when we please him, then everything else gets nourished. Ultimate controller, very obvious, especially where I'm at in life, that things are not in my control, and thank God. And then, but that third element, which is he's the dearmost friend, he's the greatest well-wisher. Man, that's what you want. That's what you want in a higher power. You want your higher power to be the best possible friend that could ever exist ever. And so those 3 are combined on purpose, right? So when we talk about here, right, when we're talking about Shama, patience, it means that I am humble and I am gentle because I trust that Krishna's plan is better than what my plan is. I trust that whatever is needed when it's time to kind of put the pedal to the metal, that I will develop those skills, that I have the capacity to do that, and that my higher power wants me to thrive. My higher power wants me to win. My higher power wants me to succeed. If my goals are spiritual and if what I want to do is get back to my authentic nature, right? So that next part, to keep balance both in sorrow and in the ecstasy of joy, that's an opulence. Right? This is not just like a bare bones skill. I'm not just going to call this resilience, meaning like I'm able to overcome difficulty and like I survived that. We're talking about our ability to have equanimity, to be balanced in sorrow and joy. That's an opulence. What do we think about when we think about opulence? We think about like ornamentation, right? We think about gold, we think about palaces, we think about, when you think about something that's opulent, you just go like, wow, it's something that has like majesty, something that's regal, something that is beautiful, something that kind of accentuates in such a like marvelous, eye-catching way our ability to stay steady in sorrow and in ecstatic joy is an opulence. How cool is that? What decorates our spirit soul are these opulences, and those opulences are feminine. So it kind of ties in all of this. My spirit is feminine. Perhaps in this embodiment, my psychology is feminine. And then these qualities that are going to aid me in my spiritual life, they're also feminine. Very, very cool. And so from there, what we want to do is we want to start to ground this. Is like, okay, so we're talking about fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience. All of these qualities are feminine. And so how do they manifest in my personal life? And perhaps what we can start to consider is, how are these not manifesting in my personal life? Sometimes it's like a way more accurate starting place, right? So we want to start kind of floating around in that meditation, which is like, okay, what is my relationship to memory, for example? What are things that I remember, and what are things that I would like to remember that I don't, and what are things that I do remember that I could probably not do it? So I'll give you an example. I don't know if I've said this in this community before, but it comes up anytime that we talk about memory or memorization. I don't have a fantastic memory. We'll start there. But what I do have a really good memory for is jingles. I have like a storehouse of jingles. I have to pray that these are not the things that come to me at the time of death, because they're so stuck in there, right? I'll give you one. Call 1-800-STEAMERS. Stanley Steamer makes your home cleaner. I am going to have to pray that that one doesn't come to me when I'm trying to like meditate in the morning, or when I'm trying to think of a verse that I think would be useful in one of these talks. It's always floating around in there. Why? It's designed to be that way. Jingles are designed to be sticky and hooky and stuff. So those are things that I want to say like, wow, why did I memorize that? How come I memorize that? Because I heard it enough times in a relaxed state. This is bringing it back all the way to the first things we were talking about. I heard it enough times in a relaxed state that it stuck. When did I hear that? I heard that when I was like cruising around in my mom's car on my way to like gymnastics when I was a kid. I hear it now every once in a while when I'm like shopping around in a store and I'm kind of just like relaxing, buying groceries for my family. So if I implant things repetitively in a relaxed state, they have a much, much greater chance of sticking. So when we do things like mantra meditation, if I'm in an altered state, if I'm in a stress state, if my sympathetic nervous system, which is my fight or flight system, is turned on and I'm not relaxed and I'm not able to self-soothe, and my nervous system is primed for emergency, danger, stress, whatever, what I want to sink in, what I want to remember, that meditation of the mantra and the meaning of the mantra, and hearing myself trying to chant sincerely as a way of connecting to my higher power and establishing a relationship with the divine feminine, with the divine masculine, it's not going to happen if my nervous system is not relaxed. It's not going to happen, right? I'm not going to be able to tap into this divine quality, right, of feminine memory. I'm not going to be able to tap into it. Same thing with steadfastness. If I'm not able to really meditate on what my identity is, who I am, and why I want to pursue this spiritual path, and why I want to inculcate these spiritual practices, and why I want to be a part of a spiritual community, it's going to be way hard for me to be steadfast, because I'm not allowing my nervous system to memorize what it feels to tap into that identity, to memorize why it feels good to do these things, how safe I feel in community, how safe I feel when I meditate, or when I serve, or when I pray, or when I read, I need to be able to do that in a state of a certain type of relaxation. This doesn't have to be like I'm floating in lotus position through my living room every time I come, I'm going to do japa. This just means there's an innate, basic, primal sense of safety. It is safe to do these practices. If we have a background in trauma, if we had a difficult childhood, if we've had problematic encounters or experiences in our spiritual life previously, right? Practicing in this faith or another faith, and we're bringing those imprints in, of course, they're going to affect our capacity to feel safe. And that's why it's important to do this in community, and sometimes to seek help from a mentor, from a coach, from a therapist, from a spiritual teacher who can hold that container of safety, who can help us co-create, generate with us a container of safety where maybe I'm not able to generate that safety on my own, but with their help, with their support, we can generate enough safety that I can start to kind of relax into the practices a little bit at a time. Right? And I can start to create new programming and new imprinting that feels more congruent with my spiritual self. So this is not an easy task. I'm obviously simplifying it for the sake of kind of just moving the conversation along, but it is important to note that trauma is no small thing. Difficult past experiences are no small things. And if those imprints are in there, it's a lot of pressure to feel like I have to generate that safety. My self-care alone is what should be pulling me along in my spiritual life. You can actually feel a lot of harm from that, and you can get down on yourself a lot from that, and a lot of negative self-talk can be generated from that. Why am I not able to do this? How come I can't relax? What's wrong with me? Other people seem to be right, et cetera, et cetera. We all know what that sounds like. So it's important to know that we're not meant to do spiritual life on our own, right? In our faith, specifically in this particular branch of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we are considered to be Goshtiyanandis. Goshtiyanandis means that we practice in communion with other spiritual practitioners. There's Bhajananandis, who are people who are more reclusive, who are hermits, right? Babajis in the mountains, or people who live in perhaps like convents, or where they kind of go into their shell and they kind of practice in the inner quarters. And there is definitely merit to that. But specifically in our lineage, especially when we have practices like kirtan, for example, it can only be done in communion with others. Even if it's one other person, that kirtan is the other and myself in communion, riding this wave, trying to connect to the divine through call and response, right? Through spiritual song. And so we are meant to be doing this together. And that actually makes the process of creating physiological safety much easier. It makes it much easier, especially if it's course correcting previous traumatic experiences. So what we want to do is have the both and. I want to work on teaching myself through self-care how to relax my nervous system, how to tap into a felt sense of first physiological safety, then psychological safety, and then eventually spiritual safety. Right? I also want to do this in community where I'm generating that for people who may need it. And I'm also able to feel supported by that when others are also able to generate it. So one's physiologically sound, open, curious, relaxed person in communion with many other people that are expressing those same symptoms, it becomes an entire environment. And that environment becomes a conductor for spiritual energy, because all of those material hangups are able to be melted away in that warmth, in that care, and that support. And that's what you guys do so beautifully here with your Urban Devi Sangha. And then that other piece, that higher power piece, is I want to pray to the Divine Mother, to Sri Radha, who is the embodiment, the living, breathing personification of all of these qualities and infinite qualities more, to give me grace, right? To give me shelter, for me to be kind of placed under her shelter and placed in her grace, so that whatever I'm not able to do, she's able to fill in. She's able to amplify. She's able to support, right? The same way that we're supported by Mother Earth, right? Which is an expansion of that divine feminine energy, right? Bhumi Devi, which is what the Sanskrit term for Mother Earth, Bhumi Devi is an expansion of that feminine divinity that comes here to Earth and allows us to play out our spiritual life here in this material kind of manifestation. From that, from the very ground that we stand on and the nature that cares for us and feeds us and houses us, all the way up to the most kind of cosmic divine dimension, asking for the mother to hold me, asking for the mother to cradle me, to hold me, to provide that warmth, and to fill in all the cracks and all the gaps and all the nooks and crannies of things that are seen and unseen that I need support in, right? That's the grace that we can ask for. That's the grace that we can pray for. And it's already embedded in the Mahamantra, right? When we say Hare Krishna, the first person that we're accessing is that divine mother, right? Hare is not just like divine mother, like I'm talking about a person. The way that, I don't know much Sanskrit, but I do know this about Sanskrit, that there's different ways in which the word shifts according to how you're addressing that word or what that word is meant to mean and how you're speaking. So when you say Hare, it's like a way of being like, Mom. It's a way of saying like, divine mother, you're actually calling. It's the vocative, I'm trying to invoke, vocative, I'm trying to get you to see me, I'm trying to call out for you, right? It's a different thing when Nama, my daughter, when she goes like, oh yeah, my mom, blah, 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 versus when she's like, Mom, I know one of them is meant for me, and one of them she might just be using in conversation. The one that's meant for me has a very specific tone, the way that she says it. And so that's actually what we're calling out to when we chant the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, it means divine mother, Sri Radha, I call on you first. Krishna, please connect me to Krishna. Right? Please turn my gaze to the all attractive. Please help me understand that by serving you both, all of my needs and anything I could imagine beyond that is completely, fully satisfied. That's what fills the spiritual vessel. And then I'm able to melt off all that is not and tap into my authentic self, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So every time that we chant the Mahamantra, we can very much focus our meditation on asking our Divine Mother to please aid us, to mother us, right? And so it might be a cool meditation to chant our japa if we have, private meditation on beads, or if we do kirtan, right? Group kind of communal meditation with call and response singing. If we start to really feel ourselves pronounce those syllables with intention. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, like really saying it, especially when we're chanting japa. Sometimes we'll just like railroad right on through there, right? But really being able to pronounce each syllable, knowing that each syllable has meaning, so many dimensions of meaning, what to speak of what I can kind of understand on a beginner level. So, and then once we tap into that intention of, okay, I'm praying to the Divine Mother, then I want to also create accountability, right? Because any good mom is not just going to do the whole thing for you, right? Imagine if I was sitting here and I was just, anytime my kids needed something, I just did it for them. On a very kind of shallow level, it might feel like that's good mothering. But the next level mothering is, I'll show you, and then we'll have you do it. And if you stumble, then I'll help you. But the goal is for you to do it, right? The ultimate expression of good motherhood, in my limited opinion, is to teach my kids how to do things on their own that are good for them. That's a very basic definition, right? So in that same way, Srimati Radharani, she's exemplifying infinite possibilities of what it's like to be the perfect spiritual practitioner. So she's teaching by example, but she also wants us to do it on our own. She's not going to do it for us. So that means that I can pray for grace and I can pray for help, but I also have to try. There has to be that accountability. And that's where we get into self-care. This is what self-care actually means, right? There's all kinds of like fluffy, new agey conceptions of what self-care is. Like self-care is retail therapy. Self-care is champagne. Self-care is a bubble bath. And I'm not here to judge or prescribe any kind of self-care. But what I will say is that effective self-care, this is just from like a counseling, therapeutic, psychological definition, and it also marries with a spiritual definition, is self-care is practice that I do to reestablish physiological sense of safety. Okay, so when I hear champagne, a question mark pops up, because I wonder if that's what we're trying to do, right? Self-soothing with the goal of getting back to what I think my mission is. And what is my mission? Each of you will define that according to your spiritual understanding and what you feel like you're meant to do here in a spiritual sense. So with that goal in mind, that's my North Star, then my self-soothing needs to be crafted around that. And that's going to be in part tailored according to the season of my life, right? Self-care being a mom right now looks super different than self-care 10 years ago. And I'm sure that it'll look really different 10 years from now, or even 1 year from now, right? Self-care when you're in Florida and it's May, it feels totally different than what it might feel like if it was like November in New Jersey. So this means I'm oriented to my time, space, my circumstance, right? The conditions of my life right now, my physiological needs, the needs of my family. So it's about being, again, intelligent, which is a feminine quality according to what we read in the Gita and what Prabhupada kind of further expanded, which is it's not just a checklist of things that I do that sound good on paper, that make sense for other people, or that I read in a self-help book or some article online. It means I understand my situation and I tune into my own needs, starting with my physiological needs, and I customize self-care. So there's two things that self-care have to be. One is very personal, which is nice because we come from a personal philosophy. So the more things are personal, the better. And the second is flexible. If I'm rigid about my self-care, right? I didn't drink my cup of hot water with lemon in the morning, I'm going to freak out on everyone today. Then it's not self-care. Now what it's become is control. I control, or I attempt to control my environment with these kind of habits or rituals that if they're not there, then I don't feel like I can hang. I don't feel like I am resilient. I don't feel like I can flow with my day. So it's not meant to be that. It's not meant to be rigid. It's not meant to be controlling. It's something that I'm accountable for, that I feel is nurturing me in such a way that I can relax and I can feel safe. Safe to do what? Safe to do my spiritual practice, safe to perform my dharma, safe to live in the world in a way that is in alignment with my highest spiritual ideals. Does that make sense for everybody? I know that we've been kind of like going fast. I promised myself I would try and like take it a little slow today, but it's just flowing how it's flowing.
It's going great. I just want to speak for everyone, and
Okay.
we're getting a lot of great feedback in the chat. I'm trying to write some notes down. Yeah, Rukmini. Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So this is kind of where I would like to have us kind of start meditating. And sometimes when we first start contemplating self-care, it's easy to think about reasons why it's not possible. What are the barriers to my self-care? And it's likely that the barriers to my self-care that I feel today, I don't have time, I don't have enough support, I'm not sure what to do, I feel like it's bound for failure, no one's going to understand if I do this, this feels overly simplistic. If you trace those back, right? If you and I were in a one-on-one session together, for example, and we were to trace those back, my guess would be that maybe those have roots in childhood. That my reasons why I can't take care of myself, the reasons why I won't be able to succeed, the reasons why this is not going to work out for me, that maybe that language has roots in childhood where perhaps I had experiences that made me feel unseen or made me feel unworthy, or that made me feel like I was less than, that I was bound for failure, that things never work out for me, right? So these are considered to be negative core beliefs. That's what they're called in the kind of jargon of psychology. These negative core beliefs are beliefs that were imprinted, intentionally or not, in childhood during my upbringing, especially those early formative years, let's say like 7 or younger. And sometimes that happens later on as well, where I got the sense that things were not going to work out. And there's a language attached to that. Things never work out for me. I'm unworthy. Nobody's going to love me. I'm going to be alone. Everyone else can do it and not me. I don't have the tools necessary, right? So those are some negative core beliefs. It's important to find those out. It's important to find those out because since they're kind of like implanted in the subconscious, sometimes what happens is that they kind of surreptitiously make their way into my spiritual life. And what I might be tempted to do is spiritually bypass them. Right? That was my old life. That's not true. Or I might be tempted to justify them using scripture or using what I think I understand of the philosophy. And I might gravitate towards self-punishment, self-beratement, right? negative self-talk. And what that's going to do is keep me stuck, actually. I'm not going to feel a sense of safety. If I'm trying to chant japa and somewhere there in the background, there's a negative core belief that says, I'm not really going to relax because I don't really think I'm going to succeed at this practice. I'm constantly distracted. Why am I always distracted? This is my thing. I always have a hang up about not paying attention. Man, I haven't paid attention since I was in school. I remember my teachers used to tell me that if I didn't pay attention, then I wouldn't succeed at life. Uh-oh. What we've done is we're trying to move forward in a spiritual practice when there's a little bit of an anchor here somewhere in the background that's created a negative core belief. And we got to be really careful with that, because we're either going to ignore it, which is not good because it'll pop up somewhere else, or we're going to reinforce it. And what we want to do actually is just detach from it. What we want, not detach like ignore, detach meaning I'm going to suspend my attachment to it. I'm not going to grasp that. I'm not going to use that as fodder for my spiritual life, but I need to attach to something else. If that's no longer my life raft, if I'm not hanging on to that anymore, I need to hang on to something else. And that's what our self-care is going to be. Soothing myself and saying, that was when I was young. My teachers are not here anymore. What are my teachers saying now? What do I want to tell myself now? What would I have told my 7-year-old then that would be useful to say now to my inner 7-year-old? Why am I safe? Well, I'm in this room. I'm in a safe space. I feel my body relaxed. Right? And so then we tap into that self-care piece, right? So I know that it's 11:50. I know we were kind of like looking to kind of tap into the breakout rooms. And I think that it would be a good time to meditate on some of these questions as you guys get into your groups, trying to find out some of the roots. And it's important, Andrea was mentioning that it might be helpful to highlight the confidentiality of the breakout rooms, right? So it's not recorded, and it's meant to be a space where you can share in confidence where you think some of your hangups or what some of your kind of past anchors may be in terms of self-care, right? Especially because it might be a new or uncomfortable topic for some of us to navigate. So, Andrea, do you want to kind of take it away with that?
Thank you so much, Dhanya. And I was just posting the questions into our Urban Davy chat groups on WhatsApp. For those who haven't joined them, they are, and I put the links in the chat as well, so you can join them. Just because the way that Zoom works, you won't be able to see the questions once you go into the breakout groups. So the way that we're going to do this, and I'm just going to pause the recording. Oh, wait, actually, let me just read the questions for those who are watching the recording afterwards. So we have one, what did self-care or lack thereof look like for you growing up? Who, if anyone, modeled it? What was the culture around replenishment or resourcing energy in your family growing up? 2 is based on the discussion of typical masculine and feminine energy, do you feel your current lifestyle is framed by a more masculine or feminine paradigm? How do you feel about it? And are there areas where you feel stagnation? And 3, what are some small practical shifts you can take in your daily or weekly routines to create greater harmony in your self-care? So those are the questions. I'm just going to pause the recording. And okay, Hare Krishna, and welcome back, everyone. As I was telling Dhanya, sometimes with breakout groups, right, you feel like you're ready, and sometimes you're like holding on for that timer. No, 2 seconds, I just got to get it in. So I hope that you all enjoyed your time with each other. So as we for those of you who have been here before, this is our Q&A and reflections time. The recording is back, so please keep in mind in terms of confidentiality what you share. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I totally forgot in the beginning to welcome you. Welcome so much to all of you who are here for the first time. You can always write it in the chat and we can all welcome you officially as well. So if you have any questions for Dhanya, or if you have any reflections from your time together that you would like to share, you can either raise your virtual hand or write it in the chat and I'll be happy to read it for you. Who will be the brave soul to start us?
I'll share.
Okay, Poppy, yes, please.
I
Go
didn't
ahead.
understand the second
sorry.
part of, I didn't understand the second part of the first question. I just couldn't get my head around it, and I'm wondering why. What was the culture around?
So Danya, would you be able to speak to that and kind of explain the second part of the second question?
Yeah, can you read it out loud? Because since I
Sure.
don't have it
So
in front of me.
it's based on the discussion of typical masculine and feminine energy. Do you feel your current lifestyle is framed by a more masculine or feminine paradigm? How do you feel about it? Are there areas where you feel stagnation? That's the second question. Is that what you're referring to, Deepa?
No,
Oh,
it was the first one, but the
oh, the
second
first
half.
one. Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha. So then the first one was, what did self-care or lack thereof look like for you growing up? Who, if anyone, modeled it? What was the culture around replenishment or resourcing energy in your family growing up?
Yeah, so that second part, what was the culture in your family around replenishment? So let's say, you know, if you lived with both your parents, right? And one of them worked, how did they recover from work? How did they recover from exhaustion, right? If one parent was a stay-at-home parent, how did they recover? How did they get their energy back? How did you see your family members, siblings, extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles? What was the culture around them taking care of themselves? That's what we talk about when we talk about replenishment or recovery. It means, was it allowed to say, like, you know, I'm tired, I need to take a nap, or I am tired, I'm going to take a walk in nature, or we replenish ourselves by going to the beach or taking a swim or taking a bath, or I take supplements because I feel like it gives me more energy, or when I spend time with my friends, it gives me a feeling of being rested, and or time for myself. I'm going to take a little bit of alone time. So these are all different kind of general forms of self-care. And if they weren't talked about expressly, then was there a culture of it? Was that allowed? Or was it kind of like, and this happens a lot. I'll say, for example, like I come from a family of immigrants, right? My dad was born in Israel, moved to Venezuela. His parents were survivors of the Second World War. My mom, she's from Venezuela. I was born in Venezuela and we come to the US. So we have immigration from all, and there's very much a culture of like work, 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 take care of yourself, don't have debt, take care of your bills, don't get credit cards, pay off the mortgage. You know, what are you doing with yourself? How do you keep yourself busy? I have a big checklist, right? Even sometimes in different members of my family, you might hear like, I have so much to do today. I have so much to do. And it's like, even on their rest days, they have so much to do. And that's a cultural thing. There's a culture of the more you do, the more satisfied you'll feel, or the more things will be taken care of, and then you won't have to worry in the future, that kind of thing. Conversely, sometimes, and also in my family, there are people who are like, I need to take a break. I'm going to create that break, even if seemingly it feels impractical, or it feels inconvenient, or I don't know where to squeeze the time out of, right? My husband, for example, is really good at checking in with me and saying, what are you going to do for rest today? Or how is your sleep, right? Even talking about that, like, do you feel physically, physiologically rested? And if you don't, how can we get you a few minutes to just sit down, or, you know, or do you want to work out? And is that how you're going to get your energy for today? So the culture of replenishment means, is there language? Do we talk about it? Or is the culture saying, you don't talk about being tired, you just get the stuff done, work, 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 get that to-do list done. And so it's a culture. It's not something that someone is sitting there and telling you every day, but it's a felt sense. It's an environment. It's the stuff that is sort of programmed into us from an early age. And sometimes that'll express itself in, yes, you are allowed to take care of yourself. Let's figure out ways for you to do that. Or, no, just keep going. And then once you get things done, then you'll feel better. Does that clarify the question a little bit? Do you have any
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Danya, for clarifying that. And Poppy, you had your thing off. So it was that, did you have a different question, something you wanted to share?
Yes, I was just going to share the reflection from the room. And self-care is that something, you know, me and then Rosemary, who was in my room, you know, self-care, me and her didn't, you know, grow up with. It was not modeled. So, you know, it's like some of us just learn about self-care at an adult age.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that we don't know how to do and where to. At least for me personally, it's just like recently, and I just feel like recently, because mental health became now people are talking about it more. You know, I didn't grow up where, you know, there was no talking about emotion. There was, even till now, I just feel like, you know, the culture in the family that we're coming from, like you mentioned, immigrant family, you know, there's no time to pause, or even the knowledge, or having the knowledge when to, you know, put a pause and talk about, you know, just like how are you doing, or check-ins. There's no knowledge around it. I feel like I lost my chain of thought. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
But
thank you
you
for
know,
sharing. I
it's,
think it's so right
yeah.
on everything you're saying.
Yeah, so sometimes, you know, for me, I'm like hard on myself. I'm like, oh my God, I'm an adult and I don't know what self-care looks like for me, what I like and I'm not like, and how also not to hold or punish my family member for not knowing how to, not knowing, because you know they also had a hard life, and they didn't knew what that looks like. So I think I'm in a place where, you know, I am trying to say and be easy, and I think you touched on it a little where you said, you know, it's okay, you know, to start on it even now, even if that feels like late. And there, you know, so that's something that just kind of touched me, is that self-care can start at any stage and it can look different for everybody. You know, it doesn't have to be all linear straight line. It can be, you know, going up
Yeah.
and down.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, something that you touched on is it can be so challenging when you're not used to talking about it, and when it wasn't a part of your upbringing. It can be so challenging to figure out, like, well, then what is self-care for me, right? Because you want it to be personal, you want it to be accurate. How do you do accurate self-care, right? And so part of this is knowing where environments or activities in which I naturally feel a sense of relaxation, or perhaps I have some curiosity, right? I've always wanted to try a pottery class. Why not, right? Just the fact that you're curious, remember that curiosity can exist at the same time as danger. Curiosity means there's already a little bit of like there's a little bit of like a relaxation, there's a little bit of ease, right? So ease and self-care, that's what we're trying to like tune into. So if there's something I'm curious about trying this recipe. I'm curious about this park I haven't been to. I'm curious what it'd be like to go to sleep 15 minutes earlier. I'm curious what it'd be like to wake up 15 minutes earlier. I'm curious about cold plunges or cold showers. I'm curious about, you know, using supplements or using aromatherapy, or I'm curious about curating the room that I meditate in a way that makes it seem more beautiful to me. That curiosity is already a clue that likely you could find some self-care in there. You could find some kind of nervous system attunement and relaxation there. So the idea is to make it really simple. It's not supposed to be something that's like super elaborate, that seems impossible to do. You can have like one-off self-care extravaganzas, if that's what we're going to call it. But that's not, I mean, it's not practical. And the idea, and remember, we come back to this feminine quality of steadfastness. What's something that I can maintain? What's a self-care that I can maintain? So it's not like I have to reach all the way over there to get it, and then finally I feel replenished like it's a breath of fresh air. What can I kind of fold into my day-to-day life? And this could be even just doing certain things I already do more mindfully. Right? It means, okay, maybe I allow myself some aromatherapy while I'm washing dishes, or I allow myself to play soothing music while I'm cooking, or maybe on my drive to work, I listen to a lecture that really makes me feel like, you know, I'm becoming informed, and that makes me feel good because I'm satisfying my kind of intellectual hunger. Or maybe I wear clothes that are comfortable rather than restrictive, because as I'm working or going about my day, it's a way of honoring how I'd like my actual like skin and body and muscles to feel in what I'm wearing, rather than restricted or too hot or too cold or too tight or according to somebody else's style or fashion or what the culture is telling me I should wear. Even simple things like that can mean me, and I'm not doing it out of vanity. That's one way to do it. But another way to do it is, if I feel comfortable in my body, then I'm able to fully focus on the mantra. I'm able to fully focus on my service. I'm able to fully focus on my job, because it's one less layer that I'm attending to that's got nothing to do with my spiritual life. Right? So it's all about just keeping it super, super simple. Easy does it, right? That's what they say in the 12-step programs when people are dealing with addiction and trying to kind of manage their way out of that. They say easy does it. Like the easiest thing to incorporate, start there. And then once you have a momentum going and you have the ball rolling, then you can get more creative and you can kind of move things around a little bit. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
That's so helpful, Danya. Thank you so much. And just want to send you some messages I've gotten in the chat. So first off, Stephanie shared in the chat, acknowledging I did not come with an instruction manual has helped with reconciling not having my unique needs met as a child. So I think that's so spot on to what you're clarifying and what a lot of people are sharing. And then I had a question sent. And the question is, when feeling resentment towards masculinity, how do we move past this and have a more healthy relationship with masculinity and femininity to aid spiritual life?
Ooh, that's its own lecture. That and I will say I appreciate the question so much because I feel like this is something that we're all dealing with. People in all kinds of bodies and with all kinds of psychological makeup. We are dealing on a cultural level, on a societal level, on an institutional level, how to grapple with harmful masculinity, right? So it is the tendency towards tyranny, the tendency towards like exploitive patriarchy, the tendency toward abuse of power, tendency towards a lack of respect and the desecration of femininity. So these are super real things. And I don't think that there's a formula to dealing with it or forgiving it, especially because it's ongoing, right? It's not something that's like far away off in my past. It's something that I encounter in the workplace. It's something that I encounter in my places of worship. It's things that I encounter in my relationships. And what's even scarier is that it's inside of me. There's an internalized problematic masculinity that I have because I learned from my environment and I learned from these other authorities and sources, and I turn that inward, right? There's a lot of information in me that isn't actually harmonic with spiritual truth. And I have that, so that's internalized sexism or internalized, problematic masculinity. So how do we deal with that? And in Bhakti, there's a aphorism of acquiring a higher taste. So a higher taste means that I'm able to drop away lesser, inferior, stale, expired ways of being if I contact the higher, newer, more evolved, more authentic way of being. So it's not that I have to drop this and then I'll be able to XYZ. It's the opposite. It's that by contacting this thing, then this thing kind of starts to fall away a little bit more organically, right? The hooks that has in me start to kind of come free and I'm able to gravitate towards something else, right? Because it's a higher vibration. It's innately more positive, right? It's more powerful. So what we want to do is, if we've had a history of encountering problematic masculinity, whatever that looks like in my own nature or in my relationships or in institutions, it's seeking appropriate, healthy, strong, powerful masculine energy in the now. Right? And that's when we have what we call in counseling the corrective emotional experience. It means I do things the right way now, the way that they weren't done before. So this could mean having, and it doesn't take a lot. It's not like an abundance. It's something that is abundant by its quality, not by its quantity. So that means maybe I find, let's say that the masculinity has to do with the way that spirituality was embodied in a male figure. Let's simplify it like that and say, I just haven't had good encounters with men in my life or male teachers. So then my attempt to correct that might be in seeking out an authentic, grounded, verifiably trustworthy male role model. Right? It might be seeking a brother-sister spiritual relationship and serving alongside a masculine presence that makes me feel safe and makes me feel heard and makes me feel supported. This could be as simple as doing kirtan with people who present with a masculine energy and allowing myself to feel safe in that space. It could be, let's say that it's masculine energy in the form of authority. Okay, then maybe I seek out scripture, or I seek out institutions, or I seek out teachers that have that masculine energy that start to feel safe. And it doesn't mean I have to surrender to them immediately and just kind of wholeheartedly give myself if that doesn't feel safe or if that doesn't feel like something I'm ready for. It could be gentle approximations, gentle approximation, because that's how trust is established. Trust is not a like one-time thing and then all the trust kind of pours in. It's an approximation. So having conversations in confidence and allowing my trust to build, having safe experiences, hearing self-disclosure coming from them, right? Teachers who allow and open themselves up and model vulnerability, model safety, model protection, and then approximating ourselves like that. So it's baby steps in the direction of the healthy masculine. That's what I would say. And then also working on the healthy masculine within us, right? What are some masculine qualities of protection, assertion, providing that I need to tap into within myself just to establish that resonance, right? If I only want healthy masculinity out there and I'm not working on whatever masculinity I have within me that needs to be workshopped, then there's not going to be the right resonance, right? So we want to cultivate it internally, and we also want to seek it externally. And sometimes this means processing what happened to me way back then that was problematic so that I can start to release from it a little bit, so that I can create some oxygen around the story, so that I can create some oxygen and feel like what happened to me is seen and is valued and is heard. And now I'm ready to move on. To just move on without really processing what went on back there, it's going to be a big speed bump. So obviously it's a big topic. I have a lot to say about it, but I would start from there.
Thank you so much, Dhanya. Maybe we need to have you back just to speak on that. That is a big topic. Thank you so much. So we have another question in the chat from Kushi. They said, thank you so much for the beautiful talk. My question is, if we realize we've always lived with more masculine energy, how can we move towards embracing the feminine energy whilst resisting all those temptations of I'm not doing enough and the anxieties that come with that? And yeah, and then just to keep in context that we're finishing at 12:30, so I know it's like a short time. So just as a caveat too, if this feels like it's gonna go longer than you can explain, you know, we also invite you to join our WhatsApp groups so we can continue the conversations there as well. So Dhanya, what can you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of want to get to the heart of this question, which is you don't need to force a balance of energies that's not organic. So it's not like if you have lived more in masculine energy that now you're supposed to be more feminine, you have to onboard. Everybody's got some sort of complement of masculine and feminine energy within them, right? I don't particularly identify as like a super feminine person. I have a lot of masculine energy. I feel like I have a lot of masculine traits, and it's been difficult to be in a woman's body and to navigate some of that energy sometimes, because the world is not necessarily designed in such a way that whatever your internal energy is, it's accepted and validated, you know, in all ways. So we don't want anyone to force something that feels inorganic. We want you to be where you're at. And so if you feel like you've always lived with more masculine energy and that feels authentic and that feels in alignment and that works for your spiritual values and your spiritual practice, honor that. And if you feel like there is attunement that needs to be worked on in terms of more typically energetically feminine, whatever, then you can do that too. It's about having harmony and making sure that it feels right for where you're at in your life right now. And sometimes certain qualities or certain energy will be called on at a time in your life, and then that'll kind of move to the background, and then some other qualities or energy will move to the forefront. We're obviously oversimplifying when we say masculine and feminine, right? There are some typically feminine qualities that sometimes present as masculine and vice versa. These are just broad categories. But the most important thing is authenticity, because where you are able to be yourself in whatever balance that is, that's where you're going to be in your right space. So whatever that is for you, if it feels harmonious, then it feels harmonious. The temptation of I'm not doing enough, and you have to make sure that you separate, is that internally I feel like I'm not honoring who I actually am, or is it I'm not doing enough according to an external marker? That's an interesting question to pose to ourselves. Is it I'm not doing enough according to someone else's standard, or I'm not doing enough according to what I hold myself to according to spiritual values? So there has to be a little bit of that awareness of, is the voice coming from outside programming or from my past? Or is it coming from, okay, I need to live more in alignment with my spiritual values? That's like a super valid way to course correct. If you're not in alignment with your spiritual values, masculine or feminine doesn't matter. It means I need to kind of design my life in such a way that my habits and my behavior align with that. So how do you resist that temptation is first figuring out where it comes from. and then seeing if you need to course correct from that. If it came from outside or from the past, and it's seeking support to kind of process that. And if it's coming from the inside, it means maybe seeking some support to see, okay, how do I live in further alignment? And I know that that's simplifying it, but I just kind of wanted to get at the different angles of that.
I think for having to give a quick explanation, that was really great. Thank you so much, Dhanya. And again, you're just whetting our appetite. You know, Urban Devi, I feel sometimes is just like the little appetizers. And then what we're really saying is like, look, this is a taste of it. And how can we continue this conversation? And as you said, it's in that sangha, and it's in those meetings of like-minded souls. So again, just a reminder that if you do want to continue this conversation of Urban Devi throughout the month, not just once a month, you can join our WhatsApp groups. We have a discussion WhatsApp group where we can discuss these things. We also have an announcements only. So I put those links in the chat. You can click on those and join. Also, even though we haven't heard from our dear Rukmini Walker, because she has had internet issues, she is here, and it is thanks to her that these sanghas, these meetings come together. So I've put some links in the chat if you want to continue partnering with Rukmini, either through her Patreon, through the Urban Devi website, Facebook. There's a lot of options there. And this recording will be available on her YouTube afterwards as well. Now I just want to finish off by inviting all of you to join us for our next Urban Devi. And that's going to be on June 18th. So please put that down on your calendars. We're going to have Gopi Gita Devi Dasi coming in, and she's going to be speaking on deep connection through Bhakti. So just a quick kind of description of that. She said, are you looking to connect more deeply with your children, spouse, partners, colleagues, or employer? Do you wish to neutralize arguments, empower social relationships, increase absorption at school and work, and motivate each other spiritually? Then you're going to hear easy-to-use strategies from the Bhakti leadership path. And these principles are taken from age-old Bhakti tradition and can be applied in any setting. So, wow, look at that. What a perfect kind of way to continue this conversation that we've had with dear Dhanya Devi Dasi. Thank you so, so much, Dhanya, for joining us today. Such a blessing. I'm just so very grateful for you. And again, just to give us a taste. So if you can also put in the chat, Dhanya, if you have any kind of social media or any other ways for the ladies today to continue connecting with you, that would be great. And then I will put this all in the description for the YouTube video, and so that we can continue kind of sharing this. Because if you felt motivated and inspired by today's talk, the best thing you could do is to share it with others and invite them to come join us. So thank you so much, everyone. We are so grateful to you for continuing to come. Please join us on WhatsApp. Please join us on the various platforms. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much.